In this video, we are joined by a very, very special guest today. We're going to talk all about these problematic attractions that Disney is tweaking and retheming. We're going to discuss that. We're going to talk about pop culture, as well as, can Universal realistically surpass Disney? Is this something that could actually happen? We're going to talk all about it up next on OG 55. Welcome aboard to another episode of Orange Grove 55. Like I said, we are joined by a very, very special guest today. Reina, welcome to the show. It is an absolute pleasure having you join us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited about being on here today.
Well, we love having you, and if you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on like social media, YouTube, all that good stuff.
Yes, but you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on YouTube, all under Reina Creole. So that's all the places you can find out what I'm talking about, the thoughts in my head that jump out into the interwebs, and all the videos and stuff that I'm doing, including pictures of things that I really am trying not to buy in the stores. So yeah, that's where you can find me.
Perfect. And everybody at home, I'm going to link all of her socials, her YouTube and everything down below. Give her all the support. Subscribe to her. She is amazing. Thank you again, Reina, for joining us.
Oh, thank you.
And right over here, we got Vash Guy, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here on OG 55, as we call him, Dr. Dre. Dre. Welcome back, Dre.
Doing pretty good. Thank you for having me back. Yes, doctor. Oh, well, I don't know if I can take that title, but, these things, I guess, get thrust on me. Whatever. Hey, if you want to go ahead and follow me, you can go ahead and do so right down there at VashGuy. Just go ahead and type it in. It should pop up. And, as Christine Wastelands McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there, OG, you got that drop for me real fast?
I do. Take it away, Walt.
And there's the biggest bargain of all.
There we go.
The biggest bargain of all right there. And I would agree, but the biggest bargain that you can get right now is at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info, squeezed fresh right from the Grove. That's the show on there. And, Halloween's just around the corner, right? So let's go ahead and do something spooky for the time. Pretty cool. But I am very, very excited to get and start with some of these topics today.
Absolutely. So the first topic today is the Splash Mountain retheme to Princess and the Frog, and this has been a really, really hot button issue in the parks community. A lot of debate out there in regards to this. Lorena, I want to start with you. Like, what are your overall thoughts in regards to this move? Where are you kind of at with this?
I kind of feel I can see, if I take the emotion out of it, I have to preface it with that. If I take the emotion out of it, I can see that it's kind of like, okay, we kind of need to update this a bit. Some of the scenes maybe people can't relate to. Maybe it's somewhat dated. Perhaps we might want to update it. So I can kind of see why they would think that. I mean, it's going ahead anyway. I could see why they would think that. But for me, on the outside looking in, it seems like it's another bit of authentic American history, or to be specific, authentic Black American history that is being pushed aside and instead taken over by an IP. Now, I have seen Princess and the Frog. I was not too impressed with it at all. It just, to me, it was okay. It was just okay. but culturally not something that I could even really identify with too much, even though I have family from Louisiana and we're just like, there's some of this stuff that we just do not see and don't identify. And like kind of how I could show you guys back in the green room, I have this book of Uncle Remus stories that my grandmother gave me. Spine's like worn off. I had to get it back from my sister. She did not want to let it go. And there's so many of these stories in here that my grandparents, who grew up in the Jim Crow South, would tell. And there's a lot of history to those stories that were passed down, in oral tradition from generation to generation. And they were raised in an era where they were actively discriminated against, and it was codified in law. So these stories were told basically to reaffirm their personhood and their traditions. So, as someone who's seen Song of the South repeatedly with my Jim Crow raised grandparents, repeatedly sat and saw that was history that they told me and stories that they told me on screen in that gorgeous Walt Disney animation. Now, the Walt Disney show that would come on, I believe it was Wonderful World of Disney, that was the only show in color that my mother and her family in Putnam County, Florida, which is in the middle of nowhere in North Florida, that they saw every Sunday. So imagine, not only do they see that, but then they find out that Walt Disney is building a park in Orlando. So for us, that's very much a part of our culture, and kind of seeing that go away. Part of that kind of hurts, that they want to change that for Princess and the Frog. So while I can see, okay, logically, you might want to do this, you might want to think, okay, well, people don't necessarily have those speech patterns now, so that's probably a little embarrassing. Maybe we might want to change it. I would have had, I guess, more respect if they had just come out and said it that way, as opposed to the prevailing opinion, which I've also seen on Diz Twitter, of that somehow it was racist and it needs to be removed, when that really was not the case.
Interesting, Dre. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, this is interesting because I've heard this opinion before of what's going on, and I've heard this kind of connection to this kind of African American ancestry and so forth, and how these stories have really reverberated, in the South, amongst a very diverse range of peoples. But Lorena, I mean, you amazingly, brilliantly, actually went through that and really, I think, put it into a perspective that I don't think a lot of people have previously heard before, and so very appreciative of that. My thing is, with this whole thing, I guess I've kind of come to terms with the whole thing of redoing Splash Mountain into Princess and the Frog. However, it's just under the it's the auspices at which they're doing it under, right? The pretext in which they're doing it under, I think, still has me concerned, because you hear the argument that, oh, well, this is kind of insensitive, or these things are maybe the speech patterns may be outdated, zippity-doo-dah, maybe has connections to something or another, and it's like, I think that's still fairly dubious. However, I suppose I guess dealing with this kind of issue, I think, Lorena, you brought it up. It's like you could have redone maybe Song of the South, or reintroduced the characters and so forth from Song of the South through like animated shorts and everything, to maybe get it past the 1940s film version, let's say, and bring it to a new generation and explore these characters in a way that was maybe a little bit more modern, right? Or at least good enough for modern sensibilities, and reintroduce them that way, and maybe even refurbed Splash Mountain to better reflect those new animated tales and so forth. But they didn't go that route. They just said, "Hey, out with the bathwater. We're bringing this in."
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, I think that's it is profound. We've always kind of talked about it from the perspective of people having a really emotional connection to the attraction itself. But for Lorena and others like her, I mean, this is not just this is not emotionally tied to the attraction itself, but there's a certain connection, a powerful cultural connection to these stories that I don't think a lot of people give much credit to, and that's really a shame, because we don't really see that take on it represented either in Discwood or otherwise.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Like, Lorena, you touched upon a great point with the history involved in these stories, right? And their connection to culture, and they're replacing that with really a I mean, Princess and the Frog is really a European white character story, and Disney just changed it, where Song of the South had more of that that cultural connection, like you mentioned, the history there, and I think that's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate too, like Dre, you touched upon throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's a lot of amazing talent involved in that movie, Song of the South, and when you right, and when you erase the movie, you kind of erase that talent, like James Baskett and all these amazing people that came and gave their contributions to that film. Now we're forgetting them, right? And I think that is really, really a shame. And yeah, and Dre, in terms of the attraction itself, I think that like, I kind of use the analogy of like a house, right? Like, you touched upon how you don't like the way they went about it, the way they kind of brought forth the idea. It was sort of knee-jerk reactionary to the events of 2020. And I think when you kind of approach a project from not really like a creative standpoint or an inspired standpoint, and it's coming from like that knee-jerk reactionary standpoint, the project is not doomed. I mean, it could be fantastic. I'm going to have an open mind, but I think you start off on the wrong foot, I think. And this is very much a reaction, and it's like, okay, we have to change this IP for social reasons. So, let's figure out what we can put in there, right? And so it feels kind of shoehorned in, whereas like if it was more of like, if an Imagineer or the creative team had this idea, like, you know what, we can actually do something better with Splash Mountain, and it was more from that organic creative place, I think the attraction would have got off, the re-theme would have been a little bit, it would have got off to a better start. I think it's just kind of on shaky ground, because it was like this haphazard sort of announcement. They didn't really have, it was kind of obvious they didn't really have that much plans around this. They announced it, there was like that public pressure, and then, hey, we'll figure it out later, basically. And I think the movie deserves better than that. And I think that if Disney's going to go and say that we're doing this, for representation purposes, I think the people that they're representing deserve better than that. I think that I want this ride to be top quality, and I think it just kind of got off on the wrong footing, in my opinion. But we'll see. I am very much an optimist. I mean, I hope it is amazing. We go on this thing and it blows us all away, and we're like, okay, I want to be wrong. I want to be wrong on this. I want this thing to be incredible. But we'll see. What are your thoughts, Reina, on that? I mean, what are your expectations for this thing going?
I would say that if this was under the tutelage of Joe Rohde, who I'm not particularly fond of his politics, but the man is a hell of an Imagineer, okay? Animal Kingdom Park is something like you will never find anywhere else. It was a knee-jerk reaction, how I saw it. I see that you want to haphazardly retheme this attraction for something, for lore that my family has been a part of for generations. My father has pictures of him and his parents when they were at Walt Disney World, and the actual characters from the Song of the South were there with them, that they're all pictured with. They were in the
Wow.
parades at the time. They were all over the place at the time. One of the stories that my grandmother told me that my dad told and got in trouble for it at school, that's actually based on the Splash Mountain ride. When I first wrote it, I did not understand the whole thing about the briar patch and all of that. And my
Mhm.
grandmother was like, remember that story that I told you? And it's frame for frame exactly like that story. So
Wow.
every time that I go through Splash Mountain, it's like hearing my grandparents tell me the story all over again. Burr Fox, who is just sly as a fox. Burr Bear, who's just kind of stupid, but he does whatever Burr Fox tells him to do.
Mhm.
You know, Burr Rabbit, whose big mouth always gets him, you know, in trouble. And then all of the other animals who are just sitting there with popcorn, just waiting to see exactly, you know, what happens. It's like I feel like it's like, okay, forget that. We're just going to retheme this to Princess and the Frog for quote unquote representation, but yet you didn't really ask those people or inquire of those people if that's a particular representation, you know, that you would want. And again, like you guys were saying earlier, Orange Grove and Ray, how you were saying about how if they would have re-released parts of Song of the South as shorts, possibly, that would change minds. Because remember, Sound of the South has been in a vault for years.
Mm.
They will not release it. You have to either get a bootleg copy to see what it is. So, because you're not able to see for yourself what that is, you're relying on people saying it's this thing and that thing and that thing
Right.
without seeing it for yourself. So, I've heard people tell me on social media, you know, Song of the South is racist. I said, well, what exactly about it is racist? Oh, well, the Uncle Remus character. I said, so you mean to tell me that my grandfather, who spoke like the Uncle Remus character, you're telling me that's racist? I mean, you're
Mm.
telling me that there were plenty of people, you know, in the South who some of them were like caretakers or, you know, governesses for white children who treated them like they were their own. You mean to tell me that that's racist? The idea that everyone was getting along at the time is racist. The idea of someone sharing their culture with someone else in story form, that not only in America, but also in the Caribbean, same type of stories. They're like all, you know, all the same. Those lessons and those proverbs are in that story. That those are racist. They're not. They don't have that much appeal to everyone. Splash Mountain has to be one of the most popular rides at Walt Disney World. I mean, when it goes down, it's akin to like the Pirates of the Caribbean. Pirates of
Yeah.
the Caribbean not working. People love going to Splash Mountain because from start to finish, just the immersion, the Imagineering is just absolutely amazing. And the story, you know, from when you get in the queue until they kick you out in the gift shop,
Right.
just see like all the stories and all the proverbs and little things, you know, that you can relate to. So now you're saying you're swapping this out like, okay, throwing a baby out with the bathroom, we're just going to start, and we're just going to use this IP that we happen to have. And I'm thinking, well, even let's say if you put it in Disneyland, okay, supposedly, there's a New Orleans Square there. I can kind of give you that.
Yeah.
But at Walt Disney World, it's in Frontierland next
Yeah.
to Big Thunder Mountain that has mountains, and there are no mountains like that in the bayou in Louisiana. It doesn't make Imagineering sense to me. Now, we'll see what they do, but from the outside looking in, I'm just like, it just does not seem like it's going to fit. I mean, we'll see what they do, but I know for me, every time I see that, it just reminds me of something that they just decided that they were going to do for sake of representation and didn't ask the people who they're quote unquote representing how they like it.
Well, and that's a great point, Lorena. And that really comes down to like that foundation kind of analogy where if you start off on the wrong footing, it kind of trickles down from there, because if they would have started from a more organically creative place, they
Mhm.
would have realized that, okay, the giant mountain, or, it doesn't really work with the Louisiana storyline, right? And then they would have adapted the ride, any Tiana ride, better. But since it was like, okay, we need to replace this IP because of it's problematic, we're gonna have to just shoehorn it in. All right. So that's what, when you get off on that wrong footing and everything sort of comes after. Dre, I see. Do you have something you want me to go ahead and share on the screen right now?
I do in a second.
Okay.
And OG, you're exactly correct on starting from a kind of shaky foundation, right?
Right.
I mean, imagine building a house on sand. It's kind of what the Imagineers have kind of backed themselves into, right? Where it's like, well, we're going to be doing this for representation and inclusive reasons. And it's like, okay, great. But now it's like, oh, okay, well, now we got to be really kind of careful about how we represent these characters, how we go about telling this story in a very authentic way. And they're so, and I've told this story many times before on this show, but just to kind of simplify, they were so dead set on authenticity, so dead set on, representation and all that it's kind of, through the development process, it's kind of become, as Jim Hill has said before, this kind of well-meaning attraction and not really a fun attraction, right? Because it's you're having to make all these corrections as you go along, like you would when you build a house on sand. And so it's like, well, Lorena, you make a good point where it's like that mountain does not exist anywhere near the Louisiana Bayou, and it's like, well, don't worry, because now we're gonna make it a salt mine, and it's like,
Like, okay.
right? And it's like exactly right, and it's like, well, that follows the story of Tabasco, and it's like, well, that's true, and but I mean, now we're getting quite a far distance away from. Tiana, her story, Princess and the Frog in general, and so forth. So it's, we're just trying to have to play these creative gymnastics, in order to kind of fit this in here. And I don't think it's coalescing in the way that the Imagineers themselves imagine. Now, OG, you've told me this story, so I'll leave some names out. But I mean, look, I happen to know. You bring up Joe Rohde. I happen to know that there were maybe some long-term Imagineers attached to this project. And it started going a particular direction, and they backed away from it. Now, I can't reveal who those people actually were. Trust me, you know them if you're watching this channel. And I when I heard that, I was just like, wow, that's... I think it reflects the disconnect that this current crop of Imagineers has with this project, and maybe even what the guests expect or even want. Now, OG, I want you to go ahead and share my screen here, because we're gonna do a show on this. So this is just kind of preliminary right here. But when you said, Lorena, that they didn't really ask people, well, that led me to go back in my head here and like, oh yeah, they didn't ask people, and well, we actually have some polling to actually prove that they didn't ask people. So I think this is from Florida Politics. I think is where this is from. A majority of Disney fans don't want to see Splash Mountain go. Poll finds, and it goes into them asking and the respondents to it. And so if you look. There's quite a bit of polls that suggest this. Do you want Splash Mountain to be rethemed? 54% say no, 46% say yes. A Disney podcast, Splash Mountain will definitely play a major role in episode 1. What's your opinion on the recently announced change? Not happy with it, 79%. Excited for Princess and the Frog, 8%. Mixed feelings, 13%. Cineblend, okay, so this is going past now Twitter, which you would expect Twitter to be the most, maybe leans... Maybe one way there. Which Splash Mountain retheme do you prefer? 42% say keep it the same out of all the respondents right there. Do you want to change? No, don't change it. 4,000 votes. Yes, change it. 945 votes. Do you think Splash Mountain should be rethemed? Yes, 16%. No, 81%. And
Wow.
so
Wow.
it goes on and on and on and on with this stuff. Again,
Well,
we will be getting more into this in a future show. But when you said that, and even our friend Ghost Hoffa, who we have had correspondence with, even he threw his response, which, I mean, Ghost Hoffa's, he does want this attraction, I would think, and I think his followers would want the same thing. But even them, they're not so thrilled with this upcoming attraction. Again, OG and I will go through these polls, break them down, and have all that. But I am deeply appreciative, Lorena, for you bringing this up, because it reminded me of some of this stuff, and it is actually really profound. I mean, they didn't. Just like OG said, they came in here with a sloppy foundation, with with some reasoning that wasn't maybe as fleshed out as they maybe would have otherwise had done. And that has led them, I think, into this kind of this tricky situation where you have to appeal to so many sides. There's a lot riding on this, socially, politically, all that kind of stuff. And now you really come up in this kind of situation here where you have to really get this right. And looking at the development of this thing, it just doesn't sound like they're getting it right.
No, it reminds me a lot of what happened with the Jungle Cruise. Now, Jungle Cruise used to be one of my favorite cheesy rides, depending on which skipper you get.
yeah.
It's a new show every time, you step on the boat, and it's so cheesy and it's fun, and it's like, yeah, we know some of the scenes are outdated, but that's what makes it so, that's what made it so funny.
Right.
So with this whole re-theme, I have to tell you, I haven't set foot on that attraction since,
Wow.
because it's not the same to me. It's not the same, even though, okay, when it came out, like in 70, I guess in 71 or whatever, yeah, it was funny, but it was even funnier now because the skippers would make jokes about how outdated some of the stuff was. And you could actually laugh at that. And no one took that as this is how, quote unquote, indigenous people behave. Hardly anybody had that kind of remark. It was just like, it was a fun ride. Too bad you don't get to see Trader Sam at the end. I missed that because you always got to stop and see, what it is that he was selling. But ever since they changed it the way that they did to, I guess, update it for modern sensibilities, I remember reading all the Imagineering releases about how they were changing it. I have had zero desire to set foot on that attraction. There's no longer the improv that the skippers get to do. I mean, one of the most famous skippers, if I remember, was John Lasseter.
Yeah.
He was actually a Jungle Cruise skipper, and those guys, they were like kings and queens of improv, and you never knew what experience you were going to get. Now you've got this road experience going, and it's not the same for me. It's not like, say, I remember with the Haunted Mansion that the cast members were very dour. I mean, they were like the saltiest, most dour. I freaking loved it because you'd walk in, and instead of them saying hello, they would tell you goodbye, and it was just great because that's how they were. Well, they wound up changing that. It's like it didn't detract from how much I liked the attraction, because the attraction was basically still the same. And there wasn't as much room for an improv to make that attraction work. It was just kind of like icing on the cake, the way that, the cast members were, go to the dead center of the room. Some of them still do say that. So that's cool. But sometimes when you change iconic attractions like this too much, like the pendulum swinging too much, and there isn't really a logical rhyme or reason to it, especially when it comes to Imagineering, because it's not just, it has to fit logically. There has to be an emotional tie to it. There has to be something that wants you to come back and experience it, because it is, an experience. People will just check out, and they're just like, it's not that must do that I must have, or go where I can feel like it's, like it's Disney for me.
And I feel like Disney is sort of underestimating like their audience. And what I mean by that is like, and this goes for film too, and we can dive into the film stuff and all that too. But like, you know, like you touched upon, Lorena, you would go on the old Jungle Cruise, and no one thought that this was anything offensive, you know, to indigenous people, you know. And same really can kind of be said about Splash Mountain. Most people would ride that. Millions of people would ride that, and nobody really walked away going, "Oh wow, that was really, you know, problematic." It wasn't really a thing, you know. And audiences, I don't know. I think they're tougher and less offended than Disney wants to believe. I think Disney is super overreacting, and I think they're sort of underestimating us. Like, you know, it's like comedians, right? Like, man, one of my favorite comedians is Cat Williams. I love Cat Williams. I have a few Cat Williams drops actually that we sometimes play on the show, but I love Cat Williams, and Cat Williams will literally make fun of everybody. It doesn't matter, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, anybody, any celebrity. Cat Williams is making fun of them, and it's like people just like laugh and they have fun, and it's all good, you know. And it's just like, I feel like people at their core are typically like that. We can all sort of just, I don't know, we have tough skin, and I think with Disney, they treat us all like babies. Like, we can't handle anything, and we're all gonna like just fall apart if we see this or see that. And it's like, no, that's not the case, you know. And you made a great point, Lorraine, about that pendulum just going way too far in one direction. But Dre, what are your thoughts, man?
Well, you know, there's a reason for that, right? I mean, there's definitely a let's say an activist contingent within Disney that is really pushing for these things. I know. I mean, we have heard, especially, I'm sure, Lorena, being in Florida yourself, I'm sure you've heard. Maybe some clips of the Reimagine Tomorrow symposiums, right? That have made their way out there.
I'm very familiar.
Oh yeah, yeah. But people forget that Reimagine Tomorrow, that was Imagineering driven, in large part. So you know, it's like. It when you look at it from that perspective, it kind of makes sense how you would get rid of stuff like Ladies and Gentlemen, Boys and Girls, and all this kind of stuff. But you know, it's funny because Bob Chapek recently gave this interview with the Wall Street Journal, and he was there was one portion of it that was really, really interesting. He kind of sat up and kind of got a little bit defiant. He was like, you know, for the people who are actually in our parks, you know, the people who are actually going to our theme parks, we do this, and he was referring to that in the context of you know, guest satisfaction and people on Twitter maybe complaining about park conditions and so forth. And it's like, no, well, we're not catering to them. We're catering to the people who actually go to the parks. It's like, okay, well, how many people who went to the parks and not just, I don't know, activists online and maybe people with a certain political perspective that could, you know, voice their complaints or concerns on platforms like YouTube and so forth. How many of them were actually going to the parks and actually were legitimately offended when you went through attractions like Jungle Cruise, Pirates of the Caribbean, before that attraction's most recent changes, right? Splash Mountain. How many people were actually going through that? I mean, I'd love to know the statistics, because Chapek's very consumer driven, right? I mean, you know, and obviously he takes that stuff into account. I've not heard any data regarding that. I've seen data, and I've shown you and now the audience some data that maybe that suggests that maybe that contingent that is most offended maybe doesn't quite exist to the degree that I think Disney, like you said, OG, maybe believes it to be. And it's profound, and we're seeing this effect on attractions to a detrimental degree, right? You bring up Jungle Cruise, and I think that's a great example, right? Because I think the script, especially in those instances that, you know, had maybe the villagers sequence, let's say, right? You know, that's gotten a little dry. I will agree with you there, but I mean, even in like Toontown, for example, with Roger Rabbit's Cartoon Spin, right? We saw how Jessica Rabbit, they put Drudge on her and everything, and it's like, what is what is going on? You know, it's this is bizarre stuff here, and I've seen you know, even women are like, hey, what happened to Jessica Rabbit? You know, she was great. What's going on here? Yeah, and it's they're just they're misaligned. I don't know. They're misaligned with their audience. Lorena, would you agree with that?
I would wholeheartedly agree with you. Jessica Rabbit, number one, is one of my favorite characters. So when I saw what was happening with her, with the Roger Rabbit ride, which I did ride when I was in Disneyland,
Hmm.
I was just like, what's the problem? I don't understand. I don't understand. Do these people not know? And some of them probably did not watch the movie. Do you realize that part of Jessica Rabbit's appeal was people only saw what she looked like on the outside, and she wound up solving the whole entire
Right.
thing because
Right.
people kept underestimating her. I'm like, did you not watch the movie? And that kind of makes me question with some of the people who are at Disney now, have they watched the catalog of material from, like I tell people, required watching, you have to watch Steamboat Willie because daggone it, that's one of the funniest cartoons. It will perpetually be absolutely hilarious. It's like, have you seen the type of animation, the types of themes that Disney has covered, you know,
Hmm.
from then until, you know, until now? You've got people who've gone through world wars, you know, poverty, recessions, all of that. And what they want is escapist entertainment. And I
Right.
think the thing that is really offending a lot of people
Hmm.
is that art is not to tell you what to think. Art is supposed to be put out there and let you, the audience, decide what that means to you, to
Yeah.
trust your audience to make up their own mind. If they come to the wrong conclusion, you know what? They come to the wrong conclusion. But
Right.
that's not for you to dictate. And that's not what Disney used to tell us. They would just put this out here for you to look at, for you to enjoy, for you to experience, you know, with your family. I've told people that, you know, 101 Dalmatians, well, Cruella, forget that. I didn't like that. Watch the 101 Dalmatians live action with Glenn Close. There's a
Oh yeah.
reason for that. There's a reason for that. Totally different. If you go back and look at the animation from the original 101 Dalmatians, it's gorgeous. It's
It is.
absolutely gorgeous, and it's, you know, and it's beautiful. So I think you have these group of people in certain positions of power at Disney that do not trust their audience to make
Hmm.
up their own minds, and that really is a shame.
It really is. It really is. And we're seeing this, you know, bleed into like the films and stuff and all that. And it really is kind of, I don't know. It's sad. It really is sad to kind of see that. I want to ask you, Lorena, what are your thoughts on kind of moving to like the film end of things? What are your
Mhm.
thoughts on this kind of trend that we're seeing where Disney, for example, Little Mermaid, right? They're remaking it, and
Mhm.
Halle Bailey, who I'm a huge fan of, actually, I love Halle Bailey, but you know, they're doing an all black cast, right? Of
Mhm.
the Little Mermaid and what have you. What are your thoughts on that kind of stuff? Where like they're taking these kind of like IP and then kind of redoing them for like socio political reasons and stuff like that. I mean, what are your kind of where you kind of stand with that kind of thing in the film world, you know?
Um, in the film world in general, I'm not too enthused with it. There used to be a point in time where if there was a race swap, there was a good reason. It usually had to do for the talent. For example, Samuel Jackson is Nick Fury. Um, Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White. Denzel Washington in The Equalizer. There had to be some kind of talent reason to
Right.
make that swap. So even though the race swap was made, people were more excited about who it was
Right.
that was playing the role. And it wasn't something that was just done for the sake of doing it. It seems like now almost every project that comes up for Disney, okay, we're going to race swap it.
Right.
just to do it to as if just simply race swapping it will fix the issue of representation. No, it doesn't. If you want to do representation the right way, you need to do it with characters people can relate to, regardless of what the person looks like. Not to say that representation is not important. It
Right.
is important, but it is not the only thing. Representation will get you maybe eyes from people who haven't seen themselves onto what it is that you're doing. But if the project isn't worth anything, it's worse than not having anything, at all. But to get back to the Little Mermaid, when I first heard about it, the first thing I thought was Disney just wants to make money. If from a logical point of view, I'd say, yeah, we race swap it. We could make some money. Okay, I can see that. I can see that. But as someone who loved the Little Mermaid, as
Me too.
someone who would go to the Little Mermaid attraction with my friends from college, and we would just sing all the songs off key. Like we knew every single song. We loved it. We loved it. These big like college kids, and we're just in the audience, little kids looking at us like we're weird because we know all the songs. So I'm like, okay, so if you're gonna do all right, so you're gonna race swap Ariel. Okay. All right. Well, let's see what is it you do. So Halle Berry, who can sing. She's
Yeah.
beautiful voice. She can sing. Beautiful girl.
Yep.
Why couldn't they make her hair red?
All right. Yeah.
That was the main thing that ticked me off. I'm like, besides the fishtail, besides the shell bra, Ariel has flaming red hair.
Right.
They did not do that. They
Yeah.
didn't do that, and to me, that just said, how could it's like how could you miss them if you miss something as important as that? How can
Yeah.
I trust you to get the story right, regardless of if you did a race swap or not? That to me that shows a distinct lack of attention to detail, and that's not something that Disney is known for.
Right. Right. And Lorena, you bring up a fantastic point. I don't know if you watch Eric July, his content.
Oh yeah, I know Eric. I know Young Ripper.
I'm a big fan of his stuff. He's fantastic, really brilliant guy. And I remember, I'll never forget it. He made a video probably over a year ago now, right? And he was getting into this conversation about representation and kind of seeing yourself in characters and relating to them.
Mhm.
And he was making the case like what you were making the case where the race is maybe just one piece of it, but it kind of goes deeper than that. And he was saying that growing up as a kid, he was like on his high school track team. So he was really fast, right? So one of the characters that he related to growing up in like the superhero world was the Flash. Okay, well, I mean, Eric July and the Flash look nothing like each other, but he said like it didn't matter because like I related to the Flash because of what my high school track, and I was a runner and all that.
Right.
And I think that really touches upon kind of like the core of this issue is that these studios, not just Disney to be fair, they all kind of do it where they just assume that like, oh, if you're a white guy, then you're going to relate to the white guy. Well, no, I don't relate to every white guy. I mean, it's such a superficial way of looking at the world. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. What do you think, Dre?
Yeah, it is unfortunate. And, it's one of these things. It's really quite interesting. Do you remember back in, I believe this was 1997, if I'm not mistaken. It was Cinderella with Brandy Norwood and Whitney Houston.
Yes, Rodgers and
Whoopi
Hammerstein.
Goldberg, right? Yeah,
Yes.
Rodgers and Hammerstein. Yeah, there you go. That's it. And I think back on that, and it's like, okay, well, if you're gonna race up, if you're gonna do this, I think that's kind of how you do it. Instead of like, we're gonna go for like a classic retelling of this story to every single detail, but we're gonna leave a few out, and it's gonna be notable, and we're gonna race swap on top of that with the hair comment and so forth, and it's like, I mean, it's kind of a bizarre thing. If you're gonna do a different take on it, do a different take on it,
Right.
because I think you can have a world where both the kind of live action Cinderella that we got in the 2010s, I want to say, the Brandon Norwood Cinderella and the animated film all live harmoniously together, right? They all, but when you try to like almost replace a character by depicting Ariel in this way, that's where it gets a little like, I don't know about that. So I guess to me, it's all about execution, I think, and how you actually go about that. Because I think, some of this stuff works, like you said, Lorena. I thought you brought up some really great examples in which sometimes these things do work, and Nick Fury, for example, right? He was famously race swapped, but again, the talent of Samuel L. Jackson, I mean, nobody really cared. It was like, cool, fine, whatever. But when you have just like an iconic character like Ariel, well, now it's like, I mean, that may be a different thing. And then when you don't have a Samuel L. Jackson in that role, well, now that might be something different. So I think it's on the other side of that line where it's like, I don't know if they necessarily got this right. And so we've seen some powerful reactions as a result from that decision.
And I'm rooting for her because I just love Haley Bailey. I'm a big fan. I asked Dre, like, I called him. I'm like, you gotta watch her sing. Can You Feel the Love Tonight? When they kicked off the Walt Disney World 50th, they had that big special, and she sang in front of the castle, and I was like, oh my god, she blew my mind. You won't believe it. Remember, Dre? I was talking to you about it.
Yes, you were at the time. Yeah, and she is great. No, she is absolutely phenomenal. Right? No question. And it's not
love it.
It's not to take away anything from her. It's just she has been put in a very kind of
tough spot,
kind of bad situation. And we talked about fan baiting, right, on one of our previous shows, and how that kind of plays into it as well. And I really wish Disney wouldn't quite do that, because now it's placing her in a bad position. Because I mean, you've seen the
I have,
stuff online.
and I've told people this online repeatedly. It is not the fault of the actor or actress for accepting the job that they have. It's not their fault. So your issue that you have, you need to take that up with Disney. And I've done it repeatedly. I said, I have a problem with the fact that Disney could not hire hairdressers to make her hair red. You could have done it. You could have even CGI, but you didn't do it. And if you say, well, we haven't done it in the CGI yet, well, then you shouldn't have released a trailer until it was ready.
Well, that's right. Her hair floats as if she's underwater, right?
Yes.
Well, so there you go. You already have CGI hair. It's already there. Just
make it red.
You just gotta, the saturation bar. You just gotta slip it over.
That's what we're looking for. We're looking for that bright, red hair. A friend of mine online, Zebius, who he's actually on Twitter, he does comics, hate artist, does a lot of great work. He actually digitally enhanced her hair when I complained about the movie poster and did it so their hair looked red. I'm like, that's all I wanted. That's all most of us want when we want to see these things. We want to see the characters that we want to see. I mean, can you imagine, like, say Anna, like Elsa is a redhead? That doesn't make sense.
Right.
That does not make sense unless it was some bad accident.
Right. No, absolutely. The red hair would have gone a long way, because I think Hallie really does. She has that very youthful spirit, that kind of like that really positive energy, like Ariel, like, she has that. She has that spark. And again, you made a great point, Lorena. Like, when people go after the actors and the actresses for certain roles, that I'm 150% against that. I mean, that is not her fault or any actress or actor's fault for what role they
agree.
Right? It's not their fault. It's the director. It's a studio. There's a million people that make these decisions, and the actress is not the one making those calls. And it's really unfair to go after a child like that, a kid. She's young.
Absolutely.
Horrible.
Absolutely. They're just like, oh, well, she shouldn't have taken the job. I said, excuse me, you're going to turn down a job from Disney? I don't think so.
Please.
I don't think so.
Oh my God.
Well, and that's again, wild. Too, it's like, I'm sure Halle Bailey is thinking about all of the existential stuff surrounding this. No, I mean, you take this role, you think it's going to go a certain way, and when it doesn't. And I've been critical of Disney and some other studios for actually fan baiting in this way.
Yeah,
I think it really kind of came to an apex with Rings of Power recently, and people, the Tolkien fans. So, man, you want to talk about a serious bunch there? Oh my goodness, they have some strong opinions about their Tolkien. Let me tell you what.
That I'll just sit here with the popcorn and just.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's kind of how I am. I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But no, there's been some rather strong reactions there, and so it kind of got caught up in that wake a little bit right there too. I think that contributed a little bit to that. But this fan baiting and philosophy, this kind of marketing exercise, that's got to stop. This is kind of ridiculous. At the same time, the Ariel thing is a really interesting one, because I think that like I said before, that character, I think a lot of little girls, heck, a lot of women in general have been looking forward to this, and again, those misaligned expectations, that's that can have some spillover to these things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, our final topic today is Universal. There's been a lot of talk with Epic Universe opening like in a couple of years now, and Comcast Universal really taking a pretty aggressive approach in this kind of theme park space. And I'm really curious, Lorena, like your thoughts on this. Like, can Universal, can they realistically, can they dethrone the king? Can they go for Disney and beat them? Like, where are you at with this? Like, what are you feeling?
If I was idealistic, I would say that there's no possible way Disney could ever be dethroned as the king of theme parks. However, in the back of my mind, it says, you know what? Worst case scenario, what could happen that could knock us off of that pedestal? And when I think about that, I do think about Universal. So let's go back, let's say right after Disney purchased Marvel. Right after Disney purchased Marvel, not too long after that, the announcement came out that the Wizarding World of Harry Potter was coming to Universal. Disney didn't have anything to counter that. And people were like, what is Disney going to do? Well, Disney wound up purchasing Star Wars.
Yeah.
They wound up purchasing Star Wars, and Galaxy's Edge was supposed to be the answer to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Now, fast forward to today. I've been to Galaxy's Edge several times. I'm actually going there tonight. I've been to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter ever since it first opened. And what I will tell you is that there's a different level of energy and immersion for both of those lands. Wizarding World of Harry Potter, you've got people who've never even watched the movies. They're into it with everything. You buy a $70 RFID wand, works at over 50 interactive stations throughout the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. And no matter how many they add, you can still use this. With Galaxy's Edge, the fact that it isn't themed to the original trilogy as was the original plan. Lee Cockrell actually did an interview with, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'm blanking, Lou Mangello. And he actually said the original plan was the original trilogy, and it would have worked perfectly. When you get out of Star Tours and you're dropped into Tatooine, there was supposed to be Mos Eisley Cantina and all of that themed. Well, they stopped that, went to the sequel trilogy. I've overheard tourists who've gone there into Galaxy's Edge and they can't quite figure out what it is. Some people ask, where's the old Star Wars? Why is it like $100 now for me to build a droid? Why is it $250 or something like that to get a lightsaber? it's all kind of haphazard. Disney still has that brand recognition. Disney definitely still has bigger brand recognition over Universal. However, Universal is working and hustling harder to come after Disney. Every a survey that I've done from Universal continually asks about your experience compared to Disney. How did they, Universal, compare to Disney? So add on to that Epic Universe, which I drive by at least twice a week. There's so much stuff going vertical over that. They've got like Nintendo World, that's going up, How to Train Your Dragon, Ministry of Magic for the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, Universal Monsters, Mansion, all of that's going up and going vertical. Also, the fact that Universal is actually cheaper to go to now. So, is it possible for Universal to overthrow Disney? Anything's possible.
And yeah,
It's
and
very, very possible, but depends on how it plays out. If Disney continues to be tone deaf to how much it costs to go to their parks, how much it costs the average family to go to their parks, how much it costs the locals to go to their parks, they will lose market share to Universal, and Disney will just be, the theme park that time forgot and people just go to visit to remember what it used to be like and then go to the other place. If they don't watch out, that is what happened. That I believe that is what will happen.
what do you think, Dre?
After Tron, which is starting to finish up here. I mean, I don't know if anybody's seen the recent photos, but it's starting to, we're getting ready here, which is quite interesting. After Tron, there's a whole long stretch of nothing for Walt Disney World's immediate future.
Tron's been working on Tron for like almost 2 years. Oh my gosh, it's embarrassing.
They've been working on it for quite a bit, and outside of some improvements to Epcot, what is it?
Moana, Journey of Water, World Nature in the middle of Epcot.
It's Journey of Water inspired by Moana. There you go. That's the one. They repeat that mantra. It's so funny. Outside of a few other things like that, I mean, there's a whole long stretch of just no additions whatsoever. And I think, Universal, they smell it. They're like, you know what? I think this is our chance to really do something here. And so they're building an entire park, and it's quite stunning, that level of investment, especially right now, especially with supply chain issues the way they are, price of steel, price of materials, and so forth. They're going for it, and like you said, Lorena, they're hungry. They are looking to eat into that market share as much as possible. Brian Roberts has already suggested that they already have, So I look at that and I go, ooh, that's kind of an interesting thing, a dynamic playing out. Now, Walt Disney World, I think it'll still remain top dog, ain't no question. But I wonder what kind of cannibalization process will actually occur. We had WW Pro on previously, who suggested that Universal right now, at least in Florida, caters to more of a locally driven audience, whereas Walt Disney World caters to more of a national and international audience, right? And he was suggesting that Epic Universe might take them more into that direction, which is a piece of the pie that Walt Disney World really values as sacred. So I am interested to see not just how many people actually move over, but who and how much each person spends. That per person spend right there is a critical metric that Disney uses in this, and that's going to be really, I think, the defining feature right there. Because when Wizarding World opened, right, it didn't really take all of that amount of people away from Walt Disney World. In fact, I think Walt Disney World actually added when it opened, because, well, if you're in Florida, you're going to go to both. But a lot of people went to Wizarding World first, got that first bite of the apple when it came to that revenue stream. And subsequently, you had people, with Wizarding World bags walking into their Polynesian villas, and it's like, that is something. And so that is why they responded, not just with Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, but also Pandora, the World of Avatar, and so forth. So I think that's gonna be an interesting thing to watch. Also, too, you bring up a price, Lorena, and I do agree with you. It is cheaper. OG has made the point though that once that market share has actually been captured, maybe you increase in price and so forth. And I do agree that's likely what will happen. Right now, I think the big thing that Universal has over Disney that not a lot of people talk about, simplicity. You have an annual pass maybe for both resorts.
I do.
Which one's easier to visit?
Universal, hands down.
Exactly, right? So, and then once you get into those parks, which one is easier to actually interact with when it comes to Express Pass or when it comes to Genie Plus and so forth? I think that simplicity, that lack of complication, I think is a big negative for Disney right now. And I know Universal has been putting out surveys to see what that metric is for their guests. And they might even include it in some advertisements coming up here. That's kind of how what this chasm there is like. So that right there, don't underestimate that. And I think Disney knows that, but they don't necessarily have the incentive right now to change it.
I think that I think though Universal does have quite a few challenges ahead though, because for example, like Epic Universe, right? And I've mentioned this on a few videos, but like, there's kind of this assumption that like when it opens, it's going to cannibalize Disney. And in my opinion, I don't think that's a foregone conclusion. I think that they might, look, a family might go, hey, okay, we'll visit the new park, Epic Universe, and we'll do Island of Adventure, but we can skip the studio thing. And we'll just do 2 of the Universal parks right now. And we'll go to Walt Disney World. That is very much a possibility. And I think that's going to be interesting to kind of look out for. Because that kind of dynamic might be happening there. How it affects the other Universal parks. Another thing that I think Universal has to work on that I think will be a challenge going forward is the family-friendly thing. A lot of time, like for example, here in Hollywood, there's not a whole lot of like, when you go to Disney, right? Like when you go to Disneyland, if you're 75 years old, you have a lot of options. I mean, you can go on Snow White, Pinocchio, Mr. The storybook thing, the train. I mean, there's just, it's endless. You go to Universal though, when you're in your 70s or 80s, or if you're a young child, there's a lot less options. And then I applauded Universal when they added that Secret Life of Pets attraction, because that's exactly what that park needs. But then they kind of got in their own way a little bit, because then the vehicles are so designed in such a way, that not everyone can fit. And it limits the amount of people that you can kind of get on that attraction. So you create this attraction to add more variety of demo into your park, but then at the same time, you're also limiting with the vehicle and all this. So I think Universal, I think the key here for them, they have to expand the bait. It can't just be kind of like the 18 to 35. They got to start making stuff where like your grandma would want to go with you, and you can bring your 5-year-old and they have stuff to enjoy. I think that's kind of the key to Disney's success, is that it really is much more for kind of everybody. And I think Universal, if they can kind of tap into that a little better, and I think they'll have a real good shot. The other thing that I think is really hard too is Disney has sort of become, and this might change, I don't know, but Disney has sort of become like this rite of passage, this real culture. It's really ingrained in our culture. It's like, you're growing up, your dad takes you to the ball game and you go to Disney, and it's all kind of ingrained into that kind of American experience now. That Universal isn't quite there with that. It's a theme park. They make good stuff, but it's not that cultural thing like Disney is. The mouse ears, it's just different. So that could change though. That can absolutely change. But I think these are some of the challenges Universal kind of has going forward. I think it is going to be an uphill battle. But it's definitely, like you said, Lorena, to your credit, I mean, it is possible. Like we've seen companies, 150 plus years, like Sears, for example. I mean, this company was around forever. When I was a kid growing up in the 80s, the Sears catalog was like the world, around Christmas time. I mean, that Sears catalog was huge. I mean, this was a massive company, and it went down. It went down like that. So no company is invincible. No company is without, cracks or the ability to collapse or get spun off or sold off. And Disney is definitely in that boat. I mean, they could absolutely lose market share and start to tank. So it's not impossible, but I do think it is a difficult road ahead to like dethrone, in my opinion.
No, I would have to agree with you. Disney is a huge brand. And like you were saying, rite of passage, like part of a childhood, everybody has to go to Disney. It's like I can see that, but I can also see, like, when I look at like my nieces and my nephews who, are quite young, I start looking at the type of media that they consume. Disney is way down on the list for them, and that's something that I would never think that would happen. I mean, there's some things that they like to watch from Disney, but there's more other things that they like to watch. And the explosion of the streaming services have a lot to do with it, like with YouTube, like with Netflix. Like my nieces and nephews, they were born in South Korea. They're American. They're back here now. They'll watch things on South Korean television. They'll watch things from other parts of the world. And they'll even see movies where they're like, oh, okay, I want to see that. Like I talk about Nintendo. There's so many kids now that identify Nintendo is more ingrained with them, especially if they're gamers, than Disney, which is a shame because Disney used to have a good amount of video games in that particular, in that particular space. So if Disney isn't careful, they kind of will wind up like Sears. I really do hope that they realize that they are not too big, too big to fail. They are the biggest game in town. When I see like international visitors who are coming here, the first thing that they want to do is Disney. Then if they have time, they'll go over, to Universal and do that because Orlando is such an international destination. So yeah, it's not impossible, but if Disney doesn't start paying attention and correcting some of this stuff, especially when it comes to price points and not realizing that not everyone has $10,000 to spend on a vacation within the space of 3 months. That's not realistic. For some families, it takes them years to save up, and that may be just a one and done. Locals, it's kind of like, well, if I go, we might go to one park, go do something else, go to Universal, do that, instead. So Disney really has to be careful and not treat Epic Universe as if it is not possibly a threat, because it really is. If it gets big enough to the point where international travelers are like, okay, let's go over there and check out that park and make that part of the visitor experience. And if Universal starts selling packages on the international market the way that Disney does, that could also be competition as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You always want to. I think Disney should really kind of take a. They don't want to. They don't want to overreact prematurely with Epic Universe, but at the same time, Lorena, you're absolutely correct. They don't want to underreact. They don't want to blow it off. So they really have to watch and monitor that, see how it does when it comes out, and if it blows the doors off, they have to respond. They have to respond. Mm-hmm. And that whole thing, I don't know, like if you saw Lorena on the D23 Expo, that whole like kind of like that focus group thing with the Beyond Big Thunder and the like the Villains Land. You didn't see?
You did not see that?
I didn't. What was the Villains Land?
So well, to set the stage for
Yeah,
you,
go ahead.
Josh Giamaro had his D23 Expo Parks panel, right? The kind of the big one that everybody was kind of expecting on, I believe, Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. And he gets up there and kind of makes all the announcements that maybe you've read about, Lorena, and maybe
Right.
others are talking about, right? So, Mando and Grogu are coming to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge West, right? Hulk was going to make an appearance in Avengers Campus. You got the new name of the new ship. We got the announcement that Happily Ever After is coming back and Harmonious is being replaced. All that kind of stuff, right? So it's all the announcements that's like, okay, like these are the actual for sure things that we're actually getting. But then they had this very bizarre, never seen it before, segment where they bring out, I believe, the head of Walt Disney Animation, right? And then
Yeah.
also an Imagineer. And it was like, okay, here we go. We're not going to say that we're going to do any of this, but we just kind of want to bring you into this process of some of the ideas that we have that we might do, might not do. Here we go. And they bring out, Moana for Disney's Animal Kingdom, Zootopia for Disney's Animal Kingdom. They bring out, what is it? Encanto, Coco.
Okay, it's coming back to me now. Yeah.
Right?
I remember this.
And so it was like this what if segment, like, hey,
Right.
what if we did this? Wouldn't this be cool? Kind of thing. All that. And it's like, are we doing this or are we not doing this? Because
It
some
was
people said, they're building this now. Here we go. And it's like,
No.
no, they're not.
they're focus grouping it to see. I think that, and that's why I kind of brought that up, because I think
Right.
they're focus grouping that the stuff that they were telling us about the Villains Land and Kanto, all that was like, okay, if Epic Universe takes off and we have to respond, we're going to focus group the fans at D23 to see what they want, and that's what we'll build, right? If we need it. And it was kind of in their back pocket. I think that whole thing was about Epic Universe and the response to it if they need it. And they were kind of gauging the D23 crowd, which one they liked, which one got a weak reception, things like that. So very interesting, very, very interesting.
You talk about the cultural institution of Disney and how it's like a Sears, right? Where it's, that was a cultural institution within the United States for, God, I mean, decades and decades and decades. I remember my grandfather talking about the Sears catalog and all that kind of stuff. And that was a huge institution right there. But, with more competition, let's say, in that retail space, well, they were sidelined. And Lorena, you bring up a good point in this kind of streaming age where, previously, we had only a handful of studios delivering us product, maybe on the big screen and maybe even more on the small screen, right? In this kind of linear networks and so forth. But now we have these streaming services, and not just even the ones that you can pay for, but you have YouTube and other things that have become cultural institutions of their own. And it's like, I see Disney, and well, they just a recent poll suggested that their how people feel about them, their perception, their support for them went down like 20%. And it's like, whoa, I mean, that's a massive decline right there. Lorena, you bring up the fact that maybe the people around you aren't as invested in Disney's products as much as maybe we were when we were growing up. We had Kenna on the show, which suggested that, hey, when you millennials were growing up, you guys had the Disney Renaissance. We didn't necessarily have that, so our affinity with Disney is a little bit different, and it's ever evolving, ever changing. Look, I remember, even as recently as Frozen, I remember, the Snow Queen project being in development for years and years and years, hearing about it, reading about it, being excited for it, and all that. I don't know. Disney Animation has a film coming out next month called Strange World. Has anybody even talked about this? I didn't even
know.
Right?
I had no idea.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, how is this not being talked about? How have I not seen an advertisement for it? I'm in this space talking about Disney on a a very regular basis. OG, we talk on the phone almost every single day about Disney, what they're doing in almost all divisions. I know very little about this myself. I can't even imagine what the general audience might think of this film coming out. And I just think about that and I go, wow, it's like, the company's really changed here, not just internally, but the perception around it has changed as well. So go ahead.
I wanted to ask you guys a question though, because we've talked, and then we'll have to close it out. But I want to ask you guys this before we go.
Sure.
We touched upon how the way people consume media is different, and that's kind of altering this younger generation, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Could the case be made then that Disney, though, as a company, is better equipped for that than a Universal? I mean, if you look at the streaming war, Peacock is like last on the list. So if you're going into this battle, right, where the young generation is like, oh well, it's the streaming, it's the YouTube, it's and then Peacock is like kind of limping along, does that not sort of lend itself to a stronger Disney going forward? What are your thoughts on that, Reina? Or is it not connected? Or how do you feel?
I'd still say they're actually doing better. When you look at Disney Plus, per se, I have Disney Plus. I don't really use it that much often. I have Peacock. I don't really use Peacock as often. However, there are other Comcast properties, movies, and films that are being streamed on the likes of Netflix, Tubi, Roku TV, on demand, physical media. So their properties are more spread out. With Disney, it's like in this niche space. Like for Disney Plus, like I can go to Disney and I can check out, if I want to sit down and I want to watch, let's say, Lady and the Tramp. Yeah. I want to watch a goofy movie. There's one place, where I can go and watch it. If I want to watch, like, say, Halloween, I can watch it on Peacock. I can watch it on Tubi TV. I can watch it on Roku channel. I can watch it on Amazon, on demand. I can even watch a copy that's been uploaded, to YouTube. So I would say that even though Peacock, their homegrown app is not as big, their catalog of work is available on so many services. And to even add to that, let's say a side note, I'm a big fan of anime.
Nice.
There are a lot of anime houses that used to follow Disney as the ideal. And that's not being done anymore. And anime is I'm looking at some of the most recent anime stuff that's out. It reminds you of the way that Disney used to do animation with, the attention to detail and everything. So there's a lot of people who they look and they see Disney and they're like, I don't see the animation that I remember. And they'll go look at anime and see that's like, this is the type of style and things that I remember when I was watching Disney. So that's also another threat that's out there too.
Anime is huge. Anime is huge. Japan is a powerhouse with just about every anime, the theme parks. I mean, I just love everything they do over there.
I just need to go to Tokyo Disneyland. I need to do that. That's on my bucket list. I will do that.
Lorena, if you're going, I'm going with you. I gotta see that. That's some good stuff right there. But no, I mean, anime, that's a very interesting thing, and it's a profound statement right there that they used to look at Disney and maybe that they're not anymore. It does tell you how the changing times, and I know a lot of people who have kind of gone towards the anime route because they're a little bit unsatisfied or unfulfilled from even American entertainment in general, not just Disney, but Disney especially. Yeah. So it is one of those things I think you really have to keep an eye on, a profound eye on. OG, to your question, I think this is why Bob Chapek has said that, you know, he looks at Disney as kind of a lifestyle brand, right? He looks at it as these silos that were maybe individually represented in the past: ESPN, Disney Parks, Disney Plus, you know, bringing those down and integrating them into each other even closer than they are, so that you know, not only can you go to one place maybe to see a piece of animation or a piece of a Disney content that was released theatrically or DTC or whatever in Disney Plus, but how that interacts with the parks and how that experience with the parks interacts maybe with ESPN and so forth. I think he's wanting to integrate that because I think he understands that is something, an advantage that they have that they can leverage over their competition. And so I do agree in that, supposing that strategy is an effective strategy, they are well poised to do that better than I think any other studio in probably the world at this point. I think the question is will that be enough in order to for them to succeed at this game and to be the kind of cultural icon that they have been in previous years. I think this is also why Bob Chapek has really kind of pushed innovation and so forth as kind of this kind of defining moment, because they got to stay ahead. They don't want to be a Sears. They don't want to be a Kodak. They want to stay ahead. But man, I think the number one thing they probably need to do right now is just, we talk about it a lot when it comes to like Splash Mountain, for example, right? The misaligned expectations, right, of what people may think of. You know, first of all, people don't want Splash Mountain to change, but if it's going to change into a Princess and the Frog attraction, like what does that evoke for people, right? What would people want from an attraction like that, and how what they're giving might not be aligned with that expectation going forward? Well, you know, broaden that out. And I think the most important thing for Disney to do right now is to realign themselves with the general consumer, right? With the people in various parts of North America that maybe they had forgotten. I think Top Gun Maverick showed that, hey, there's a market out there that hadn't been catered to for a while, and maybe we should go ahead and tap into that. Hey, maybe we don't release product that's not going to be, let's say, universally distributed, right? Maybe we can do some things to better align our brand, our image, and our product to a changing time. Something that they I think have lost a little bit there. If they do that, I think they'll be okay, no matter which division or industry of the company you're referring to.
Awesome. Well said. And Lorena, it was an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. You are always welcome back. We would love to have you. Really interesting conversation today.
Well, thank you. I'd love to come back. I had an absolutely fabulous time here. So thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. If you could let everybody remind them where they can find you on social media.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter, you can find me on Instagram, and you can find me on YouTube, all same handle, Reina Creole.
Perfect. And everybody at home, her links will be down below. Subscribe, follow her on Twitter. She is amazing. Thank you, Lorena, so much for coming on. And Dre, Vash Sky, host of the Freshly Squeezed show here. It was great having you on as well, sir.
Hey, I'm happy to be on. Honestly, when you said that Lorena was going to come on, I was like, oh man, she is great. She's awesome. I love her work. Love her, media personality. So I was like, oh, I got to get on. And you had mentioned in our intro that Casual was featured there. We love Casual. He has spoken highly about you, so I was like, okay, I got it.
I love Theme Park Casual.
He's great, isn't he? He's fantastic.
He's awesome.
So I had to make some room, and I'm so glad I did. Lorena, thank you so much for coming on. If you want to go ahead and follow me, you go ahead and do so right down there on Twitter. Just go ahead and type that in, Vash Sky, and should pop up for, as Christine Waistlines McCarthy would say, for all the
robust
discussion right there. I think that's perfect right there. Yeah, well, She says it every single quarterly earnings report. It's
Yes,
hilarious.
she
So-
does.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Go 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove.
Perfect. And to close it out, and to we were talking a little bit about Universal, so why not have some Optimus Prime close us out today?
It's been an honor serving with you all.
There we go. Thank you both for coming on, and thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below with your thoughts on the Splash Mountain re-theme, pop culture, the Little Mermaid remake, the Universal competition factor. We would love to hear from you. Subscribe to Reina Creole. Link down below. Follow her on Twitter. Thank you again, Reina, and thank you all for watching. And have a wonderful, wonderful day.